Então, faço 22 minutos para mostrar. Vamos lá, eu vou fazer
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Hello. All right. Okay, we're almost ready to get started. We still have a couple more minutes. Meanwhile, I'm taking care of logistics. Okay. Video's okay. Sound is okay. Voice should be okay. Andre at least confirmed me that he can hear me, so that's good. And I am taking care of all the logistic steps to give you guys the last product lecture of the program. It's going to be the last product lecture of the year. This is the last one of 2022. This was a long year for One Month PM. There's so many programs. This is amazing. And I am just opening up my slides, guaranteeing everything is right. Session 4. Time flies so fast, especially when you're having fun, which is something I am having on every single session. I hope you are as well. Okay, I think I have everything almost ready. We should end a couple of minutes earlier today, at least based on experience. Session 4 always ends up a couple more minutes earlier than the last one. So hopefully by 7:45, 7:50, I think we should be able to wrap today's session. There's so much to cover. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about development and the role of a PM within the development process. We're going to be talking about success measurement. There's so many frameworks around success measurement. We're going to be talking about launching products, growing products. And finally, we're going to end up on career tips, hiring, how it works, especially if you're transitioning into a new role. So there's so much stuff that we're going to cover today. It is crazy. I don't even know how I was able to fit everything within one session, but this is 1 month PM, not 5 weeks PM. So we had to do it. And I'm excited we did. So I'm just going to ping people on Slack and guaranteeing we have as many people as possible today because it's a last moment. All right. And for everyone joining now, welcome to the final session. We haven't started yet. So have a few minutes. As I said, we generally finish this one a few minutes early. So there's not a big rush to get it started. Also getting my logistics ready because it's going to be the last session of November, last session of the year. I usually take December as a break. It's also a great time to reset some of the programs, even though we have opened up January. So we have 3 programs running in January. Foundations is coming back. We also have growth open. I think this is a great opportunity for anyone who wants to expand. I think growth and no code are probably the best follow-ups to foundations. It really equips you with a bunch of skills that I would love to have on foundations. I don't have the time. So growth is there. And we just opened up a new program, Data for Product Managers, which covers data querying, visualization, understanding how to manage data and how to make good data-driven decisions. I think it's a beautiful program. It's going to be launched in January. We're already packing a lot of people in. I hope you get to join if it's an area that interests you. I think based on everything that you've heard in the last 4 weeks, data is crucial for the role of a product manager. That's not new. So is growth. So I do wish, if you enjoy this, all 1 month PM programs follow the same approach, follow the same MO and method. I think it's actually a fun. I'm maybe biased, but I think it's a really great way, very lightweight way of learning new topics. And I think next year is going to be a tough year. So every new knowledge you can get for a fair price, I think you should take it for sure. Okay, cool. I think we're ready to get started with our session number 4. We have a bunch of stuff to cover. I hope you bring questions to today's session. And by the end of today, I'm going to explain how tomorrow's last lunch and learn 12:45 is going to go. It's a bit different. We'll leave that to the end. It's my Marvel end scene credit approach. Like, you got to stick to the end to know how it's going to work tomorrow. I think it's going to be worth it. I hope you enjoy it. Meanwhile, I have my dog literally eating invoices in front of me, and I have to take it from his mouth. But all good. We're back. All right. Let me get my slides up. Give me 2 seconds. And you'll see the usual massive 1 month PM logo. By the way, if you are interested in pre-applying to any program of 1 month PM, you'll probably need to do it on not probably, you need to do it on the spreadsheet that is on the link that is shared on general, because if you try to do it on the normal website, it's going to give an error because you're already enrolled. Or you can DM me if you want. Send me a DM and I'll help you through. I'll fast track. I always fast track alumni. So you'll skip the queue. This is a special offer just for 2022. In 2023, we're shaking things up. It's going to be a bit different, but that's for next year. All right. You can see the screen, right? You can see the 1 month PM logo, right? All good. Okay. Let's start with today's session 4. This is a special session. I say this in all sessions, but I think this session is important because success measurement is a really important part of the product role. Right? Like, we got to know if we're going in the right direction. And unfortunately, it's not as common as people believe. PMs, product people, measuring success of their decisions is not as common. So it's going to be a big topic for today. It's going to cover maybe 75% of the entire course session today. So do stick around. I think it's going to be worth it. But before, as usual, we got to do a quick recap of last week. So in a nutshell, 3 minutes. What we talked last week was 1, product vision. We talked about the future, about how to tell the story, how to rally people to work with you to get to a place that the world has not seen yet. And that place will come to life because of your product and because of your execution. So that's vision. And we talked about the importance. We talked about a few frameworks to work vision, from the principles, and we used Elon Musk as an example, to the bridge between vision and strategy. And we saw the Disney and Visa's examples. We talked about Tesla. We talked about the North Star as also a really important step and tool for a proper vision. So a lot of stuff we covered last week. Then we talked about product strategy, and how strategy is that sexy word. Nobody understands what it means. We talked about how strategy is basically your opportunity space and your ability to choose the opportunities that most likely lead you to an outcome, the outcome you want to achieve. And it's a lot of people confuse strategy as the solutions we're going to build and the choices we're making of what we want to execute on. And that's not strategy. Strategy is about the opportunities you choose. And that lays the path to get to that vision, the future you're preaching. Then we talked about prioritization and how we looked into different methods like RICE, Moscow, North Star, prioritization matrix, and how all of them come together to give you a step-by-step approach to making good product decisions. Because remember, you have limited resources. And in the end of the day, if you want to optimize for customer perceived value, the difference between the perceived value and the price customers pay, if you want to maximize that with limited resources, you got to make good prioritization decisions. And finally, we ended roadmap and how product roadmap is a communication tool. We saw Marty's definition. I added a few extra seasoning, as I call it, to Marty's definition. But all in all, product roadmaps are tools. They're tools to communicate what the team is going to be doing. It's used to align people towards a specific goal, a unified goal, so that everyone powers through the same direction. Otherwise, you're going to be dissipating energy. So this is what we covered last week. I hope it was clear. I hope it was an exciting session. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'll just move on to today's session. No, we're good. All right, cool. Thanks for the feedback, Miguel. Let's go to today's session, which is about, well, the first part, which is about getting stuff shipped. Because up until now, we talked a lot about different processes to plan, to understand what we'll be doing, to make decisions. But we actually need to get this developed. We need to get this built, right? So we're going to talk about the development process, getting stuff actually shipped. And I built this chapter of the program as what I would have loved someone to have told me as I was going into the product world, but nobody did. So I had to learn the hard way. So this is not going to be the typical theoretical approach at Scrum and Agile and all of that. No, I'm not going to do that. You can read about that online. I'm going to give you the pragmatic approach at understanding the role of a PM in the development process and development world. So first of all, it's really important to understand that if you join a product team, actually before, if you read online, theory will tell you that Scrum or any agile methodology, which is fairly used in the world of development, will look like the illustration on the left, which is you have these ceremonies and they all kind of work perfectly together in a straight line. You have design handing over the designs that team needs, and then you do a sprint planning where you assess that and you break things down into specific capacity. Maybe you'll use story points, and then the engineering commits to a specific amount of issues for a specific timeline, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 1 week, maybe 4 weeks, and then they start building. Product is supporting midway. And getting close to the end of your sprint, this time box, you're going to start deploying so people can start testing, maybe even have a QA team or your engineers are testing, yourself are testing. And by the end of the sprint, you launch stuff and beautiful. Everything comes to production, perfectly timed. You even have time to do a retrospective in the end of the sprint where you reflect about all the things that went wrong, which are barely few things, and all the things that went well, and everything just works. And next Monday, new sprint starts and everything is just perfectly aligned. And this is what theory tells you. This is rarely what happens, almost never. The most typical environment, the most typical situation you'll see is actually the one on the right, which is you go into a sprint and yeah, design is not done. They're still working on stuff. They're still validating. They're still designing some screens and steps. So your planning is kind of incomplete because you were looking to have that done. So you're going to go half prepared to the planning. So you got to fill up stuff because, I mean, people got to maximize work in progress, right? That's what everyone says. So you got to stick up stuff that isn't as higher priority, but it's pretty much ready. So you put it there. But meanwhile, you're still scoping a few of the decisions. So we'll add stuff in the middle of the sprint. That's fine. I mean, it's very flexible. It's called agile on purpose, right? So people are still working on stuff, and because scoping is still midway, of course you're not going to launch stuff by the end of the sprint, and you're still running around the deficit, so you don't have time for a retro. You will do that next sprint for sure. Will be better next sprint, and it's all chaotic. Maybe you shipped half of it, a lot of transition from one sprint to the other or carryover. I mean, this is the chaotic version of sprints, but it's honestly much more like reality, or at least much more like the majority of sprint teams. Okay, now of course these are two ends of a spectrum, right? Your reality will likely be somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's the hard truth. But why do I say this? Well, I say this because, one, I want to manage the expectations of what the reality of building product with engineering teams and launching software actually looks like. All right. It's not the beautiful, crisp, theoretical way that the online world kind of says. It's often not as chaotic as the one on the right, of course, but it's important for you to know the reality. And the second reason I say this is there's a lot of imposter syndrome in product managers that is built because their expectations is that sprints or any agile works like the one on the left because that's what they were taught. And then when they see the reality of the right, they think it's their fault, and it's actually not, because it's all about the process that has humans involved, and humans are tricky, and building software is hard, and there's a lot of unknown unknowns that you have to deal with, and there's a lot of discovery that happens in parallel, and that creates chaos. So it's not your fault if you see the reality or the right, or something close to the reality of the right happening. It's not you that you're not good at your job. It's not you that you're not doing a proper product work. It's not you that are not applying the right frameworks. It's part of life. Of course, a big part of your job is also to find ways to bring the right into the left, and how you do that in a way that is healthy and productive to the team. But that's what you should be looking for, right? It's how to deal with this reality. A lot of the best approach is use the frameworks. I usually say frameworks create harmony in the middle of chaos, right? That's why frameworks work, right? So let's touch on a few frameworks that can help you create this harmony in the chaos of the development process. The tool I use, the framework I use, is called Dual Track, or Dual Track Agile. Right, dual track is super simple. There's basically two tracks that run in parallel. There's the discovery track, also known as the shaping track, based on Basecamp's shape up methodology. The discovery track focuses on learning and validation. Right, there's a bunch of stuff happening in the discovery track. There's stakeholder interviews or customer interviews, user interviews. There's requirement research or analysis. There's job story writing or use case mapping or story mapping. There's a lot of feedback loops that are running. Can be ceremonies, can be processes, can be meetings. There's a lot of architecture and technical feasibility analysis. There's a lot of stuff that's about understanding, whether it's the problem space or the solution space. It's about understanding, right? You can see, based on all of the things that I mentioned, discovery track isn't done by design or research or even product. It's done by every single person in the team. It can be engineering on the technical side, can be product on the requirement side, can be design on the interview side, research on the stakeholder side. There's so many things happening on the discovery track that they need to be owned and developed and done by everyone in the team. On the other side, running in parallel, you have the delivery track, also known as the build track, based on Basecamp's shape up. And this focuses on predictability and quality of execution. All right. In the delivery track, you're going to be working on prototyping, actually building stuff, writing issues, epics, the stories, the breakdowns, the initiatives, development, actually writing code, building stuff, and running your MVP tests and experiments with customers or potential customers. And this is where the team comes together and executes. Right? Everyone, again, is involved in the delivery track as well. It's not just engineers working on the delivery track. Everyone, product, design, research, testing, QAs, everyone is involved in the track. This shows that every single part of the team, every person, is involved in both the discovery and the delivery track, and is running these two in parallel that actually gets the team working together, learning together, executing together, and shipping together, which is a really important part of high-performing teams, is ship together. And you're able to do this using Dual Track Agile. Now, Dual Track also empowers you to do loops. That's the goal with Dual Track, is that each loop within each track allows you to learn something and inform the other track. So for example, if you're running discovery and you're testing some ideas and experimenting on some hypotheses and going to customers and showing them and talking with them, the information that they give you loops back into the development track and informs the scope of the development, informs the scope of the design, the scope of the experiment that you're running. And that, when you build it and test it, it loops back into the discovery track so that you can test and experiment and see the insights based on what you built, which then again loops again back to the discovery track with new insights, with new iterations. And you're running these on and on and on continuously so that you can discover and develop at the same time, instead of being a waterfall approach of I build design, that design will be tested. After testing, it will go to engineering. After engineering goes to production, and then we'll gather data, and then it informs. That is actually a very slow cycle And the beauty about building software is that you can continuously do that. There's actually the CI/CD, or continuous integration, continuous development, but in this case, it's continuous discovery and continuous development that you can run on the product side, and it helps bring data quicker to everyone, to the team, so that you can make better decisions, you can course correct faster, and you can incorporate those learnings into your future decisions. That's the goal with dual track agile. Now, if you read ShapeUp, you'll see this design, and this design is just a different approach at explaining dual track. In ShapeUp, the same two tracks, the build track and the shape track, happen at the same time on every 6 weeks, which is kind of a roadmap for ShapeUp. You have both a shaping exercise with certain people involved in understanding what the solution could look like, doing discovery, running hypothesis, working with engineering on what the architecture of a solution could look like. But at the same time, you have this build process where people are executing, they're designing the issues, they're talking about the stories, they're developing the code, they're preparing launch, go to market, etc. And then every 2 weeks, you do this break point where people look at the possibilities, they look at the opportunity trees, and they do betting, like what do we believe we should be shaping and building for the next cycle. They also cool down, they fix bugs, they fix issues, they rest a bit because the 6 weeks are pretty intensive, and then they restart again. They do the new shaping based on the betting, and based on what they shaped on the previous cycle, they start the building. So that's how generally the dual track of Basecamp's ShapeUp actually works. And they all map the same. They all touch on the same philosophy of bringing people together, having everyone involved, which oftentimes it might feel like, oh, but then we're being very inefficient, because shouldn't engineers be focused on the code, and shouldn't be designers be focused on the design? Why are people like within the development side or within the discovery side? And my answer to that, and I'll talk about that again in a few minutes, is we want to focus on being effective more than efficient. We want to focus on building stuff that actually matters, that people are bought into the solution, bought into the problem that they're solving, that will actually yield better products. So that's how you want to focus on. And building, getting the team all together working. Yeah, it might make a few things a bit slower, but at least the things that you're building are much better. Now, some key concepts, or the things I would have loved a manager or someone with experience to have told me as I started this, and I've learned this by joining the process and seeing in real time what works and what doesn't. 5 things I generally recommend people to keep an eye on. The first one is the earlier the product stage, or the earlier a product feature is, being the earliest a new feature or new product from scratch, being the most mature an iteration on something that's been running for a long time. So the earlier, the less rigid your agile should be. Because agile, or any framework, honestly, not just agile, exists to create harmony. That means that you generally apply it when there's chaos. The framework will align chaos, will create harmony. But in the beginning, or the earlier product stage, the less chaos you have, even from inception, there's zero chaos because there's zero built. You're building from scratch. So if you apply rigid frameworks in a new product, you're just creating friction where friction doesn't need to exist. What needs to exist is progress, is velocity, is almost a free-wheeling approach to building, as long as people know what to build and where to go. So the recommendation I give is assess whether a new feature or a new product is rather early, and think, okay, how can I customize my agile, my frameworks to be a bit lighter weight, maybe have less tools, less artifacts, less ceremonies, and just give time back to people and make communication lighter. So that's my first tip. My second tip is that there are 2 ceremonies. Well, there's 3, but I'm going to talk about 2 first. 2 ceremonies that you should never skip as a product manager. One are stand-ups. You should always join stand-ups. Some people call them dailies, but these are daily meetings that generally happen in the morning, where people give a quick update on what was done yesterday, what's going to be done today, or what's the plan, and if they have any blockers. All right. And a lot of people say, oh, but that's for engineers. Why should PMs join? Well, PMs, product managers, are unblockers by default. They exist to look at problems and find ways, solutions to solve those problems. And oftentimes a blocker is a problem. The reason why a certain team or a topic isn't progressing is because someone isn't able to. And you as a PM should use a stand-up to highlight that, understand it, and find a way to help that person or that part of the team execute on that. So stand-ups shouldn't be optional. You should always join. It's also a great way to be present and listen to the pains of the team, because at the end of the day, you could actually accelerate, independently of you managing them, because you're not going to be managing engineers. You can indeed help them achieve a better work productivity, work style, etc. And just listen to them, and being on the stand-ups really helps with that. The second ceremony are plannings. So sprint plannings, some people also have groomings, but I'm focused more on the plannings here. Planning should also not be optional for PMs. You should always join sprint plannings or any type of planning, because in the end of the day, in the planning, you're going to be discussing stuff like, oh, what's the scope? And what's a priority? And what if we do this? What if we don't do this? And this is our estimation of complexity. But if we have this or take this out, complexity will be different. Should we? All of these are questions that a PM is the best person equipped to answer. Another really important part of plannings are context. A lot of people who are understanding and planning what they're going to be working on, what's the initiative, they need a really good context. So that they understand how to make proper decisions. And PMs are the owners of context. So plannings are not optional, because either you're going to provide context or you're going to help people understand what needs to be done so that estimations are good. And keep in mind, estimations are never right. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, don't micromanage. All right, you got to escape the vortex of micromanaging. You got to trust the process that you're implementing. This process contains tools and ceremonies that exist to give you visibility and understanding of how things are going. Otherwise, if it's all about micromanaging, you don't need a process. You just need to ask every single day or hour, how's we going? Like, what's missing? When are we getting there? It reminds me of the donkey on Shrek. Like, how are we there yet? Like, you don't want to do that. All right, use this analogy. Don't be the donkey on Shrek. Trust that you built a process, or the team built a process that will give you the information and the visibility for you to manage up, manage diagonally, manage horizontally. The process will take care of you. Focus on stuff that's more important, like talking with customers, managing stakeholders' expectations, testing the prototypes or the hypothesis, gathering impact information. All of that is a much better use of your time and not micromanaging. Tip number 4, it's okay to ship less, but have everyone participating in both tracks. The number one thing I get engineers asking me is, how can I be more present in the product decision process? That normally means, how can I be more present in research and discovery and customer needs and decisions of what we're going to do first, instead of just being someone in the end of the line who gets a prescription or a requirement document and then is asked to build whatever is being asked. And what I say is, if you have a dual track process, it means that every single person, including engineers, will participate both in discovery as well as development or build. So in this case, yes, you are indeed being a bit less efficient, because you're not siloing people into their hard skill, like designers design, engineers build or code. You're bringing people more together. But if you believe that the people in your team are smart, they have good brains, then they will contribute to a better solution. So you might not be as efficient and produce as much as you could, but you'll be more effective because you'll get a better solution, and the market chooses better solutions, not larger solutions. Okay. Tip number 5 is never skip retrospects. That's the ceremony number 3 that are really important for PMs. I usually say that 50% of the job of a product manager is to build the machine, the product, and 50% is to build the machine that builds the machine. All right, the factory in a certain sense, not in a literal, but in a figuratively. The machine here is the combination of, or the factory here is the combination of processes, of tools, of people, of priorities, of context, of communication flows, all of that. And the best way to improve that part of the machine is to do retrospectives, because a retrospective is a moment where people reflect on the last couple of weeks, maybe the last sprint, and say what did go well, what didn't go well. And you can use that as a customer discovery. In this case, instead of customers are your engineers, your designers, your data people, and you should own the steps to improve the machine that builds the machine. And you get that from the retrospective. So don't skip retros, participate, gather insights, look at them as a customer discovery where your customer are the people building the product and you're there to improve the machine that builds the machine. Right, so these are my 5 tips that, again, I would have wished someone would have told me when I was joining product. It would have made me way less anxious, way more prepared, at least knowing what I should miss or what I shouldn't do. And I think this really improves your ability to be a PM in the process, the development process, which oftentimes a lot of PMs don't actually know what their role is in that process. All right, does this make sense? Yeah, cool. Got a vertical nodding. It's beautiful. All right. Any questions before I move? We're good. I see the chat is empty. So I think we're pretty good so far. All right, cool. I try to leave the development part pretty lightweight. Scratching the surface. There's a lot of stuff you can read. I have a lot of sources that I've added to the slides. I invite you to, you can also drop on Slack questions specific to the development process. But I keep it light because I want to add just one more thing, which is the best teams I've seen until now. And I talked with a lot of PMs, the best teams correlate with having a really strong partnership between the product manager and the engineering lead, whether it's a tech lead, an engineering manager, whoever leads a squad. When you have a very strong partnership, you trust the other person, in this case can be an engineering leader, to own the development process, to own communication between the squad and yourself. And you can focus on a lot of other stuff. But in the end of the day, if you have a strong partnership, then you're both going to be working on the machine that builds the machine. And that's something that I really recommend everyone to do. Cool. All right. So no questions. We're good. I hope it's because it's super, super clear. Let's now jump to measuring success. I usually start talking about success by quoting Peter Drucker, which is, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. That's super simple, right? The analogy I generally use with success measurement is, imagine that you want to go to a destination. You're going to drive to a destination, right? And you're going to a highway. And you want to get there as soon as possible. So you speed up to the limit of the highway speed limit, because nobody ever goes above the speed limit, right? So let's assume that you go to the limit of the speed limit. Now, you can go faster. You'll arrive early, but only if you're in the right highway. If you're in the wrong highway, actually going faster will get you further away from your destination. Success measurement is making sure you are in the right highway. Okay, that's the analogy. That's the goal with success measuring. Now, success measuring in product is actually very, very hard. All right, because everyone is kind of working in parallel at the same time to deliver the product to customers. The story I usually tell is from a past company I worked with. And it goes a bit like this. It was the end of September. That's the end of Q3, right? Right before we joined Q4. And the team was working extremely hard in delivering a massive feature. We had a very specific goal. We had a main OKR we wanted to improve by 30%. And we were very confident our feature would improve that by 30%. And we worked really hard, and we shipped. By the end of the quarter, we shipped the feature. A couple of weeks later, we looked into the data, and we didn't improve by 30%. We improved the feature by 100% with the OKR, the metric. That was crazy. Nobody could believe it. We were super confident. We're pumping our chests, saying, look at how amazing we are as a development team, as a product team, as a design team. We're super proud. And while we were preparing ourselves to go to the company, look at us, we realized that the sales team, the marketing team, the finance team, and the operations team were all doing the same. They were preparing to tell, look at us, how amazing you are. So we went to kind of figure out why. And we realized that, one, the sales team had quotas by the end of the quarter that they wanted to meet. So they went really hard, full time, overtime, calling all customers on the pipeline and really going all in to meet the quotas. Meanwhile, the finance team they did an analysis and decided to run a special promo on the pricing and do a flash discount on the last few days of the quarter to really try to pump up the cash flow by the end of the quarter. Meanwhile, the marketing team was able to actually get a national article on press that got a lot of attention, a lot of traffic coming to the website, and a lot of new first-time customers. And finally, the operations team did a full week where everyone came together to answer the entire backlog of tickets, support tickets. And that brought a lot of customers back and renewed their subscriptions. So in the end of the day, everyone was like, okay, but who was responsible with actually achieving the 100% growth on that specific OKR? Was it product? Was it every other team? If product didn't build that and the other teams did it, would we have achieved the same metric? If product built that and nobody did anything else, would we achieve the same metric? Nobody knew. In the end of the day, for the company, it matters less because the company wants to achieve the OKRs. That's why they deploy these teams. But then for an execution and strategy, it's always important to understand what contributes to something. Now, if you're not at scale, like Facebook, for example, with billions of users, and you can create an infrastructure that actually segments your users and you're able to isolate customers and users to specific versions, but this only exists at scale. I don't even recommend teams to build this infrastructure until you are at millions of customers of scale, right? Otherwise, you're just spending time that you should use building other features. Right. But in this case, it's really hard. So measuring success is important, but we need to understand what type of success measurement we're going to be measuring. Right. So what I have here today for you are 5 metrics, 5 frameworks to measure success. All right. We're going to be talking about measuring product market fit. We're going to be talking about measuring loyalty. We're going to be talking about measuring stakeholder metrics or functional metrics. We're going to be talking about measuring alignment across the company. And we're going to be talking about measuring growth with funnel metrics. Okay, so a lot of tools. We're going to start with the first one. Then we'll do the break in between some of them when we get closer to the 7 p.m. Okay, let's start with product market fit. One of the hardest, because it's not just about building the product. You actually need to make sure the product fits your target market. We talked a lot about this on session 2 and 3, right? So how do we measure product market fit? There's no specific definition that tells you, oh, product market fit is this. Therefore, when you achieve it, you got there. It's not binary. There's a great podcast with the founder of Volt, a delivery food startup. And he says that when you have product market fit, you understand you have product market fit. If you don't understand you have product market fit, you don't have product market fit. But this isn't enough. Like, yeah, this is great, but how do I know I'm even progressing towards product market fit? I might know that I don't have it yet. Am I getting close to it? So the tool I bring is called the Sean Ellis test, the author of Hacking Growth. And Sean Ellis built something that correlated with a lot of companies with achieving product market fit. And the way it works is very simple. You ask customers of your product. So you need to have customers. Otherwise, of course, you don't know if you have product market fit if you don't have customers. And you want to ask them how disappointed they would be if they no longer would have access to your product, if they couldn't use it anymore. And there's 3 types of answers that you're trying to collect. Not disappointed, meaning maybe they don't care. Somewhat disappointed. So there's some pain losing access, but just medium pain. And very disappointed. Someone would be very angry or very sad losing access to it. So you run this, all right? And what Sean says is that when you're able to get the very disappointed above 40%, 40%, that means you have product market fit. All right, that's the basis of the analysis. Now, it's not just gathering insights about this question, right? Because there's actions you can do to get there. And I like to use the example of Superhuman, the mail app. Now, Superhuman has a great article on this on First Round Review. I really recommend it's on the source, but I'm going to tell you the gist of it. So they ran this, how would you feel if you could no longer use Superhuman? And this was on the early versions of the app. And they got this result, 22% on the very disappointed. Now, this says that they don't have product market fit. So they did something else, which is they went to look based on the people that answered where they fit. And they saw that they had different types of users in different types of disappointments. They had founders, managers, executives, and biz dev in very disappointed, and they had other types of customers like customer success, engineers, salespeople, data scientists, etc., sitting on other areas, right? So they asked, okay, what if we narrow down the type of customer we have? Let's say we focus on the 4 types of customers that said very disappointed, and we eliminate all others. When they did this, they realized that suddenly, if we only targeted this type of customer, they now had 32% very disappointed, 45 on somewhat, and 23 on not disappointed. Okay, that means targeting would make their product closer to product market fit. That's interesting. That says something. Now, you could keep doing this. You could immediately remove the rest, right? But then you're balancing against reducing your addressable market up to a point that it's not big enough, right? You got to struck some level, okay? What Superhuman found is that if they focused on these 4 segments, 32% is not that far from 40, maybe you can iterate. So the next step is they went to talk with all these areas. Sorry to go back. They went to talk with founders, with managers, executives, biz dev, and they went to try to understand what they loved. And they focused specifically on the very disappointed customers. They ignored the not disappointed because they realized, oh, these guys, they won't care. They don't care about my product. I want to focus on customers that love the product. Maybe I need to make it clear on what they need. Maybe I need to double down on the things that the very disappointed are looking for, because these are the ones who really care and love my product. So they start iterating based on that. And as they progress, they saw, and they continuously asked the question, and they saw progression of this metric. They went from the 47%, crossing the threshold of technically product market fit, and it kept growing, 56, 58. And the feedback and the retention rate improved. So customers keep using the app. Conversion rate went up, meaning that the cost of acquiring customers went down. They spent less on marketing to bring new customers. Word of mouth was happening. So customers that loved the product brought new customers with them. So it would be cheaper, higher retention, higher love. They were able to upgrade their prices because customers who love your product tend to be more flexible around how willing they are to pay. So it really, really worked for them. So this is one really simple but very effective way of actually measuring product market fit. So give me a second, my slides broke for a bit. So some tips on using the Sean Ellis test to assess your level of product market fitness. Number 1 is to politely, I love the politely disregard the customers who said they wouldn't be disappointed. They're probably not fit for your product. Maybe you start acquiring them a bit broader. Maybe you tested multiple marketing channels and they got into the product, but they're really not engaged. So why take feedback from these? Because you're going to be fighting a fight that you're not going to win because they won't love your product. Instead, focus on the actual customers who love. All right, that's the goal. Repeat this process. All right, and make that product market fit score, the 40% as a target, but the number as your most important metric early on. Probably more important than revenue metrics or profit metrics or EBITDA or margin metrics. Oftentimes, this product market fit score should be your most important early metric as you get your first customers in. Number 3. Analyze the feedback of your on-the-fence users. On-the-fence users are like the somewhat disappointed, but they've been like answering in between disappointed and somewhat. They're kind of there. They want to love the product, but it seems there's some things missing. double down on looking at their feedback. What would convert them into very disappointed, right? That's who you're going to win. And finally, build your roadmap around customers who love your products that say, okay, this is why I love it. And focus on that and address the needs of those on the fences that's keeping them back, that's keeping them from converting. This is what you want to do. So these are my 4 tips on how to use the Sean Ellis test. By the way, there's a lot of tools online that you can build and ask this question autonomously. Don't build a feature to assess this. You can also send surveys. You can literally call people on the phone and ask them directly, how disappointed would you be? Gather these resources, run this type of survey every now and then, whether it's monthly or quarterly, so that you can see progress on the metric. But you want to track it and you want to see how better you are. And do narrow down your audience, especially early on, because a lot of times lacking product market fit is actually a bad go-to-market or a bad customer segmentation that just happened to happen in the beginning. Does this make sense? Is it clear? Okay, cool. Awesome. By the way, I was super lucky to have dinner with Sean a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed this and his feedback on using his test. He doesn't call it the Sean Ellis test. That would be weird as hell. But I told him I call it the Sean Ellis test. He was very humble by that. And he says every time he speaks with companies that are applying this, the correlation with their improvement of product market fit is amazing. So I do recommend, and do read his book. He would be happy if I said I would be recommending his book. I read it and it's a great book for growth. All right, loyalty metrics. Loyalty is about customers sticking with you. Because, by the way, I didn't ask any questions on the Sean Ellis test before I go to loyalty. All clear? All good? All right, cool. Let's go to loyalty. Because loyalty, the best analogy for the importance of loyalty is imagine a bucket, right? And you're pouring water. You're putting more water. You want to fill the bucket. But your bucket has holes in the bottom and they're leaking. And you put water, you put more water. Yes, it goes up, but it never goes up as much as the amount of water you're putting. It feels like it's disappearing. It's called a leaky bucket, right? Your water here are customers, and you're putting customers in your product, your bucket, but they're leaving. They're not loyal to your product. That's the leak. That's the hole in the bottom that makes them go away. You want to try to find a way to measure that loyalty. How good are your customers with your product? And for this, we're going to use the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. And the NPS, you probably answered this in the past. A lot of companies like to use it. The question it asks is, how likely is that you'd recommend our company, product or service to a friend or colleague, right? You probably answered this in the past, right? And there's a 0 to 10 normally. And you're going to answer a higher score if you're more likely to recommend, and a lower score if you're not as likely to recommend. And what the NPS theory says is that there's a high correlation with stickiness and product love, which then correlates with retention, the higher the score. What it basically says is they're using reputation as a proxy to know how addicted or how engaged you are with the product, because you would never recommend a product to a friend or a colleague that you don't actually have a positive feedback or a positive engagement with, because you care about your reputation towards your friends or colleagues or even family. So you wouldn't jeopardize that for a product. That's what it says at scale. NPS correlates with retention, with stickiness. It even correlates with your ability to raise prices. So when you're answering the NPS, you have 3 buckets depending on your answers. The first bucket are promoters. Promoters are 9s and 10s. These are people who are really loving your product. They're going to stick with you. If you raise the price, they're probably going to buy it anyway. They're going to tell their friends to use it. They're going to be your drivers of acquisition. The second bucket, the 7 and 8s, are the passives. The passives are customers who, they're not unhappy, but they're not loving the product. They're not going to churn, at least immediately. If you raise the prices, they might start to get a bit angry. They're not going to actively tell their friends about it. They're just there. They're using the product. And then you have the detractors, 0 to 6, the largest area. And these are customers who are really not happy. A 6, of course, is very different from a 0, but they correlate with churning. They're probably unhappy. They might be telling others to not use the product. They are very willing to churn, especially if you raise prices or if you do something that they dislike. So these are the detractors of your product. Now, to calculate NPS, you look at the percentage of promoters from the total of answers you got, and you subtract the percentage of detractors from all the answers you got. So you ignore passives, right? So you can see immediately that an NPS score can go from 100 or 100% to minus 100 or minus 100%. How is it 100? Well, if you only have promoters out of every single question you asked, you get 100. If you only have detractors and no promoters or passives, you do 0 minus 100, that's minus 100%. And you're probably going to get something in between. Nobody has 100, nobody has minus 100. You're going to get something in between. And now the normal question is, okay, why is this important? Well, it is important because data at scale, based on Lumoa, shows that promoters are 4 times more likely to buy again, and repeat customers are very, very positive for you. They're nearly 6 times more likely to forgive your company because you're going to do a mistake. You're going to do something that you shouldn't. Promoter will stick with you. And they're 7 times more likely to try new things you're going to launch because you're going to improve your product offering. And your current customers are your best first customers. Now, non-promoters are 90% more likely to buy from competition because if they don't love enough, if someone comes with a better value proposition, a better value gap, they're going to go for it. And they're 20% more likely to cut spending or even churn completely. All right. And you're going to lose money. And you acquire these customers for a price. And if you're going to lose money on them, it's going to suck for you. Right. You're going to stop adding value to the company, which is part of your role as a PM. Now, a normal question on NPS is also, okay, what's good? Like, what should I benchmark against? Well, conventional wisdom says that everything that's negative needs improvement, right? Got to work on this. Everything from 0 to 30 is considered actually a good NPS. It's very counterintuitive, but 0 to 30 is actually already considered very good. 30 to 70 is considered great, like top of the market often. And above 70 up to 100 is excellent, almost unheard of. Depends on the types of industries, all right? If you look at a few industries specifically, based again on Lumoa's data, you normally have like consulting companies or digital marketing companies scoring quite high on average, above 50. That's on average, which is super high. And you can immediately see there's a correlation between people offering a service or experience and how the NPS go high, because you can customize the experience. It's much more bespoke. It's much more detailed because there's someone. And you immediately see that lower scores on average are like logistics company, delivery companies, SaaS businesses who operate often very autonomously. So the more technical and the more autonomous a customer is, the more likely is that they'll face a problem reducing the net promoter score with a certain product. Now, of course, when you are assessing your own score, it's important to benchmark against averages of your industry instead of saying, oh, look, I'm a SaaS company and I should be above 60 because consulting companies are. That's actually unfair. If you're a SaaS company with 60, you are an amazing SaaS company. But if you're a consulting company with 40, you suck as a consulting based on the average. Okay, so it's important to benchmark against multiples that make sense for your industry. But independently, if you are below 0, there's work to be done. You got to assess why are customers detractors, what is making them unhappy, also what's making promoters. What is it something that you should bring to your detractors that they need visibility on, but there's work to be done. Now I have a question for you, and you can use the chat for this. My question is, what industry actually has the lowest average net promoter score? Think about products or experiences that you really don't like, and then ask, okay, what's the industry behind this product? And that could be your tip. And by the way, as you answer, you can use the chat for this. Also add how much do you think is the average NPS of the industry to see if the result is actually close or not. So what's your guess? Lowest average in NPS. So Arthur says transportation airlines -20. So someone is having some bad experience with transportation. Rodrigo, same thing. Aviation. People in this call really don't like airplanes. Shipping companies, okay, logistics, Katerina, all right. Telecom, so Tiago went telecom to -10. I'm liking how people are like on the minus as an industry average, okay. Jonathan has been having problems with public services. I guess someone doesn't like governmental agencies, that's fine. Healthcare, Miguel, yeah, especially when that bill comes in and it's really expensive to pay. Okay, we have some interesting variation of products and industries that are disliked. So healthcare, public service, telecom, shipping, airlines, aviation, banking. I was waiting for banking because like, yeah, your bank, branches, having to deal with some complex issues. Gonzalo does either logistics or telecom. All right, okay, we have some really interesting options. Let's see what the research shows on the lowest average NPS. And we do have a winner, actually. The answer is internet providers with -1, because who doesn't love their internet provider? The provider of Wi-Fi, because it always works, right? It's always super fast. It's always up. It's always working, right? And when we want to change internet providers, it's so easy. They're so open to that. You don't actually have to go on calls forever and make letters almost to get them to change, right? And they're never raising the prices without you being able to do anything, without providing actually extra value. It's so easy. And immediately after, it's cable and satellite TV with 1. And you know what? Have you noticed who delivers both cable, satellite TV, and internet service? Telecoms. So telecoms, and Tiago, you are the winner of this quiz, are the ultimate worst NPS providers in the market because they're actually able to bundle both awful products in one service. Amazing. So cable, satellite TV, and internet service, which gives telecoms as the ultimate winner, are the average. But keep in mind, majority of you were saying like -20, -10, -30, and the average is actually -1 or 1. So people are way more forgiving than you'd imagine. So the average is much higher. I've actually looked at a lot of other examples. So let me use the examples you gave me. So airlines are actually pretty high, 44 on average. That's insane. Airlines do have a specific thing, which is if you're younger, you're actually gonna score worse on an airline. Why? Because you're probably gonna use lower cost airlines that correlate with worse service. If you're older, you're gonna spend more money on airlines and you're gonna actually score them with higher NPSs because you're gonna use more premium, better services, etc. Then we have banking. So Abba said banking. Banking is actually not that bad, 35. Again, on banking is the reverse. Younger people will actually score banking higher because they're used to using neobanks like Revolut and N26, and the experience is actually pretty good. And older people, they're used to their traditional banks, the branches and the bureaucracy, and they score it really low. So you have the reverse of airlines. Public services, I don't think we have here. And healthcare, we do have pharmacies, health insurance. They're pretty low-ish, not as low as Miguel thought they would be. But I don't think I have health insurance here. But anyway, you see the examples here. They're good benchmarks that already tell you, okay, how should I balance out? Now, a few tips on NPS before our break. Number 1, you want to be honest with the NPS. A lot of people make a mistake, which is, oh, let me measure NPS when customers are happy because they just finished using my product. And yeah, you could measure there, but you'll always have a higher NPS than reality because not every customer will actually have a great experience like those. So my recommendation is choose somewhere where majority of customers will experience something. Can be on homepage of your product, can be on a typical screen that they all visit, and measure there and always measure in the same place. It will give you a more standardized view of your NPS. and you can actually see it progressing over time. Number two is keep a standard. Okay, always measure at the same time in the same place. That way you know whether it's going up, it's going down, it's staying flat. If you change where you measure it and the cadency, you don't actually know why it's changing. Number three, integrate tools. Okay, don't build a feature to measure NPS. There's so many. I use Delightful, great tool. It's not the cheapest, but it's super flexible, allows to get qualitative feedback. We'll talk about that in a minute. It allows you to segment by users, allows you to integrate with APIs, which make the NPS much richer in terms of information. But do use a tool. You can even use Typeform for that. It's just a great tool. Number four, make it a company-wide ownership. Don't say you person or this team owns NPS and you are responsible with increasing. That's a lie, because anything in a company can influence NPS. It can be your product, but it can also be your customer support. It can be your invoicing. It can be the price. It can be the experience that someone had when listening to an employee, a founder, the CEO. That can impact NPS. So everyone should be an owner of the NPS, and everyone should be working hard to make their touch point with the customer better for the NPS. And number five, reflect on quality feedback, not just a number. Of course, there's a percentage of customers who will offer quality feedback, because you should always ask, like, okay, tell me more. Why are you scoring a 6 or a 9 or a 0? Tell me more. Try to collect that feedback and then assess it, evaluate it, understand what you can learn from it, not just the number itself. Cool? Clear on the NPS? All right, cool. So before we jump into stakeholder metrics or functional metrics, we're going to do a break. So 5-minute break. We'll be back at 7:05 if you're in GMT time zone, whatever your GMT 05, we'll be back. We'll do the second half, the last second half of our November sessions. See you in 5. All right, we are back to the second half of today, our final session. I can't believe we're already in the final session. It felt like 2022 started literally like yesterday. I was joining the January cohort, super excited to be back, and suddenly it's the last class of 2022. It's crazy. It just shows that 2023 probably is going to go really fast as well. So do enjoy time with the people you love. Now we're going to go to the second half of today. We're continuing on the metrics. By the way, by the end of the entire program, we'll send the certificates or statements of accomplishments to everyone. I'm also going to send you a link for an NPS score, all right? Because even I have to understand whether you're liking, loving, hating the program. Super proud of having 82 NPS average for the last 2 years, which really says that this actually works and people enjoy it, though there's always extra points I can try to get, and I'm always trying to improve, and your quality feedback on that is always magical. So you'll also get the chance to do an NPS assessment. All feedback, I read every single answer. I already have around 600 answers that really inform the score, and all of these answers helped make the program better. So your voice really matters. All right, cool. So functional metrics, second half of today. And don't forget, by the end, I'm going to be announcing our guest for tomorrow, our last session, 12:45. But now we're going to go to functional metrics, because as a PM, you'll end up dealing with stakeholders. Stakeholders are marketing leaders, operation leaders, finance leaders, go-to-market leaders, GMs, general managers, CEOs, leadership, all of them will end up engaging with you, because if you work in a product company and product is the vehicle of value and they want to deliver value to themselves and the customers, then you'll work with them. And the beauty about working with cross-functional areas is that they all have their own metrics, they all have their own approaches to assess success, and they're all chasing their own numbers. So it's important for you to know these numbers, and a few examples of metrics that they might be following, segmented here based on a few industries, are, for example, MAUs and DAUs, monthly active, daily active users, very common in social products, B2C products. Another metric is GMVs or AOVs, gross merchandising value, average order value, very common e-commerce or D2C. They measure the amount of sales and the average sale value of a customer. Another metric is lifetime value, which is a repeatable purchase metric, very common for marketing folks who are trying to optimize how much value they can extract from each customer. Marketing folks will also talk to you about CPA or CPC, CPL, cost per acquisition, or cost per customer or click or lead. These are funnel metrics that allow them to know whether they're acquiring the right type of customers. When you, for example, have higher NPS, these tend to go down. When you have lower NPS, they tend to go up. B2C metrics, a common B2C metric is also ARPU, average revenue per user, very common in social products or ad-based products. Contribution rates or take rates, very common in marketplaces, for example, which is the percentage of sales that you keep from intermediating between multiple parties. Your finance team will likely touch on accounting metrics like gross or net revenue or profit, maybe EBITDA, earnings per share, a bit more on the public side. It's very common for you to deal with them, or even leadership or founders. Of course, you have sales, normal metric, transactions, units sold. On the SaaS side, you usually have retention rate or churn rate, like how many customers you retain or lost. You might have ARR, average revenue, or MRR, monthly recurring revenue. In SaaS, you can also have ACVs, which are average contract values. They all tell how healthy it is, the acquisition of customers and the retention and the revenue that you're keeping and you're growing on. All of these are different. There's many more. The library from Google Ventures that I have there also tells you a lot of that. But these are a bunch of metrics that you might end up engaging with as you do your product role, because in the end of the day, It's your job to help your peers, your stakeholders succeed. And oftentimes their success correlates with these metrics going up into the right. You also see something else, which is your industry or vertical where you operate correlates with some specific metrics. Like in e-commerce, as I mentioned, GMV is very common. In marketplaces, the take rate is something people care a lot about. In social, the MAUs and the DAUs, you often see them represented. In SaaS businesses, the recurring revenue, the MRR, DRR are very common key metrics people are chasing. And of course, in hardware, the actual transactions and sales and margins are very common to be tracked very closely. And why do I say this? A bit like on the first session, it's kind of full circle. Whenever you're building a product in this vertical, the likelihood of you wanting to follow these specific metrics is actually very high because it correlates with success. This is what people are looking for. Now, a couple of tips on specific functional metrics. Number one, ask your stakeholders, what do you measure and what makes you successful? Because if I'm here to prioritize stuff for the roadmap that is focused on making you more successful, then understanding what you seek and chase is also important for me. That's why knowing these metrics, understanding them, makes you more successful to deal with stakeholders. It helps them understand that you know what they want, and they know that you'll be prioritizing stuff that moves their metric, their success measurement. Number two, try to get visualizations of these metrics. Oftentimes there's like database and there's some BI tools, business intelligence tools, or some visualizations on some data analytics tool. Yes, these are your stakeholder metrics, but if you have visualizations to quickly access them, the likelihood that you are prepared when you have a meeting with them, the likelihood that you can bring those metrics to the team that is working on features that will impact is much, much higher. And that gets you buy-in, gets people connected to why you're trying to move that needle. Number three, understand what influences different parts of the product. All right, because different things in your product experience will move certain metrics. If you're looking for MRR, probably the pricing and the conversion from free to pay will have a deep impact. If you're looking at lead generation or a CPL, you probably want to look at your top of funnel, your landing page, your ability to capture data from your customer. If you're looking at retention, probably how close and how fast you get customers to the aha moment will correlate with how retained a customer is. So try to audit your product and how it influences different types of functional metrics. And last tip is don't over data yourself. Over dataing is try to track and get every single metric in the world. Suddenly you'll have a soup of metrics and you don't actually know where to look for. It's going to be a mess. Try to focus on some key specific metrics that you believe correlates with stakeholder success, business success, and product success, and then double down on prioritizing for those specific metrics. Clear on functional metrics and stakeholder metrics? All right. Okay, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on this. I hope it's super clear, that nobody's super tired, but I'm going to go with like, it just flows. It's just easy to understand. I'm going to go with that. It's a beautiful way to live the last session. So I'm good. All right, let's go now to alignment metrics. This is the last part on metrics that aren't for launch and growth. The last one is going to be around growth. So alignment metrics are about connecting teams, especially as teams grow, to the same objective, to the same goal. All right, because every team is going to be paddling in a direction. Hopefully every single team is going to be paddling in the same direction so that they all achieve the same objective. And this becomes harder and harder as you grow. A great methodology or framework to tackle this are OKRs. Okay, so you probably heard about OKRs in the past. OKRs stand for objectives and key results. Now, objectives and key results, they can be explained in multiple ways. There's many types of explanations. The best way to understand OKRs is actually reading the book called Measure What Matters from John Doerr. He's the person who actually kicked off OKRs into mainstream. And Google was actually the company that made it the thing you need to have in your stack of success measurement or KPIs. And OKRs, per my definition, or how I see them, or how I use them with my teams, have 3 layers. First one is the objective, is the description of the outcome that you want to achieve, is that future state, like where you want to get to. Now, a lot of companies use objectives with a specific number of a measurement. That's okay. I don't, and I'll explain a few examples why. But I normally use it as a statement of that future, right? Not often the future needs to be a number. It can be a state of success or positioning that you want to get to. Directly connected and aligned with the objective are the key results. And the key results, which are lagging indicators, and by lagging indicators, it means something that you do not have control over, are basically numbers, and this one need to be numbers, that define when you achieve an objective. Now, what it means is every objective will have a bunch of key results, and that's how you measure whether you achieved the objective or not. The example in a couple of minutes will make this clear. But basically, you want to break down your objective into all the different ways you're going to measure success of that objective. Those are your key results. Now, connected with each key results are a number of initiatives that are leading indicators, meaning that you have direct control, that are your best bets to influence the key results. Because remember, if you don't control the key results, then your initiatives, the way you control, is your way of achieving the key results. And as a consequence, because they're all connected, achieving your objectives. That's why there's alignment, right? Now it makes it clear. Alignment means objectives connect to key results connected to initiatives. Let's look at an example. Imagine that I have an objective to my team of increasing the overall customer happiness. Okay, I need to define how do I know that I increased the overall happiness. And for this, I use 2 key results. I get 80 NPS in Q2 and 9 out of 10 ratings in specifically April. If I achieve these, I can say I achieved my objective of increasing overall customer happiness. So you see why I don't need to use a number in the objective, because my key results are already my number proxy to know whether I achieved the objective or not. All right. Now, how do I get this? Well, I define there's 2 initiatives that I believe will deliver me the 80 NPS and the 9 out of 10 ratings. The first one is I'm going to follow up with 100% of customers. And 2, I'm going to grow my team of customer support. This is what I believe will get me to achieve those results. As you can see, the initiatives being leading indicators, you control them. You tell what you do, you tell how much you do, how much to invest. Now, key results, lag indicators, you don't know how much customers will score on the NPS rating. You don't know what's going to be the score of the ratings in the sales of April. You don't control that. All you can do is initiatives that will increase the probability of achieving those key results. Now, you see in red some annotations. This is just showing the importance of using something called the SMART metrics or SMART measurements. SMART stands for an acronym that goes for specific, meaning your metrics should be very clear. Everyone should understand what it is and how to calculate it. The second one is measurable. So you need to be able to measure how much that metric was actually delivered, how much of it was the result by the end of your time box. The second one is actionable. It needs to show it's clear what to do, what you can and what you will do to achieve a metric. R is for realistic. You don't want metrics to be impossible. If they're too far-fetched, nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to work hard to achieve it. And the last one is time boxed. You need to define a beginning and an end, because you need to know when to start acting on it and you need to know when it ends so you can measure the success. All right. So every time you choose a metric for OKRs, it needs to be a SMART metric and everyone needs to believe in it. Clear on OKRs? Cool. Some tips, because I'm doing tips on every single one. Number 1, OKRs only work if you implement across the company and together with management. All right. And if you're a manager, you need to have the teams collaborating into the definition and implementation of OKRs. Otherwise, it's going to be a top-down implementation, and the teams who will actually have to execute on the initiatives won't believe them. This is very common in most companies. They have OKRs and nobody believes in them, either because they're unrealistic or because they didn't contribute to the definition, and then they're useless. They don't align anyone. Number two, my strategy for this is what I call meet in the middle. Meet in the middle is when you have management defining what the objectives could look like, okay? Management and the teams collaborating on how to assess the key results. Of course, management will define the result itself, but understanding how to measure success is something that can be done together. And then bottom up, the teams defining the initiatives that they believe will yield the best result to achieve the objective and key results. That's what I call meeting in the middle. Tip number three is define what success looks like in terms of OKR, but also add a stretch goal, something that goes beyond what success looks like. For example, at Google, success is 70% achievement, not 100, 70. 100% is stretch. That makes everyone be very ambitious, all right? Because everyone wants to get to 100%, but that's stretch for Google, that's good. So define your success and define your stretch. That pushes people to go further and beyond. And last, make the OKRs a tree, because at top level, you always have company success or objective that breaks down into company OKRs or company key results. And that will break down into initiatives. And if everyone actually has this as a map, you'll actually see every single team aligned behind the same OKRs, and everyone is actually paddling in the same direction. That is the goal. Cool? Makes sense in terms of tips? All right. Cool. I think I'm very confident we're going to end up the session ahead of time. That's good. We're going to have time for some discussion by the end. That's also okay. But I think we're flowing in the right tempo. Okay, cool. Let's talk a bit about funnel metrics or growth measurement, right? Because all of this, okay, already implies that you launched the product. Otherwise, you can't actually measure it, right? But launching is just step number one. Growing a product, that's actually the beauty. That's what you want to focus on. So let's talk about funnel metrics as the main framework to measure the steps of growth. And funnel metrics, also known as R metrics or pirate metrics, were developed by 500 startups a few years ago. And they follow this number of steps that end up being a funnel, because you're going to lose people in between each step. And they stand for, number one, acquisition, which asks the question, how do customers find you and how do I acquire them? What it means acquiring customers. That's step number one, or also known as top of funnel. Number two is activation. How many customers are activating, getting to aha moment, to what I believe means you experience the value proposition of my product. Now, as you can see, not every single customer you acquired will actually get there. That's why there's a leak, a drop in the funnel. Your goal is to maximize the percentage of customers you acquired that gets to that aha moment. Step number three is retention. How many users are actually coming back to the product? How many are actually experiencing aha over and over as time progresses? That gives you your retention rate. Again, your goal is to increase the percentage of customers that are retained every single week, day, month, depending on your type of engagement. Number four is referral. How many customers are referring your product to others? How many people are coming to your product as acquisition because an existing user is advocating the value on your behalf? As you can see, the larger the percentage of customers who refer, the more acquisition you do, the cheaper acquisition you do, the more your product grows beyond your marketing budget. And the last one is revenue. What's the percentage of customers who are actually contributing to revenue? Now, of course, the different products might have revenue by default. You can't use the product if you don't pay. Other products might have freemium, or other products might acquire users, but they don't actually end up paying because they don't experience the value, they don't see it. So how do I grow the percentage of customers that end up contributing to revenue? That's my funnel. Again, tip here, and I'll talk about this in a minute, is you always want to design and define your funnel based on your customer journey. Some products might have acquisition, but they have immediately revenue to be able to activate because there's a paywall or there's some subscription you need to pay for. Other products, even for example, Netflix, they have a small trial experience, which allows you to activate, but then immediately you need to pay, meaning revenue comes before retention. And then retention is measured on paying customers. Some products might not have referral at all. You have no mechanism to track referral. So you can drop it from the funnel until you add it. Maybe you should add it and then you track it and you know how it's impacting your product. So you should design and define your funnel based on your customer journey. Let's look at an example. Uber, back to our course example. Uber is known to have a strategy of acquisition that goes through PR, press releases. Uber knows that if they do a lot of PR, if they do a lot of media, customers will see, prospective customers will see, oh, now we have Uber, Uber is available, Uber is cheaper, Uber is better. So they'll download the app. So Uber defines that acquisition is a account created. Download the app and account created. So they want to see how many people visit our website, visit our app store, and how many actually download and are acquired, they create an account. But then they need to activate. And Uber defined that the first right is your activation. So they want to see what's the percentage of accounts created that did the first right. I want to activate that. I want to improve that. I'm going to talk about the experience, what they call the graceful exit, that you don't need to pay. So that's the magic moment. They want to grow the percentage of people to go in. Number 3, retention is about notifications for Uber. They know that oftentimes they need to bring people back. They look at data. They know that someone will use Uber in this specific day, often at this specific hour. Maybe I can push a notification and bring them back and they'll use Uber and they are a retained customer. Uber also used successfully referrals. So they used to have this friend gets friend or member gets member code that would give you extra euros of money and would give your friend extra euros. The beauty about these referral programs is that not only is it cheaper for Uber because that money they're giving you is in product value. That means that you'll end up getting that money back to Uber and they'll retain revenue, but you actually use the product as a reward of the referral, which makes you actually activate. So they're creating this flywheel of referral and activation immediately. And the last one, revenue, is how many users actually end up using Uber and contributing to revenue beyond the referral and actually adding more money, higher LTV. And for this, they use multiple strategies from UI and UX to new models to pricing discounts, all with the goal of increasing the percentage of customers that actually contribute with revenue. Makes sense as our example on our... Cool, that's good. Some tips on using our methodology. Well, number 1, define the metric before defining the strategy. All right, the same way I said, Uber uses downloads and accounts created as their acquisition metric or first right as their activation metric. You need to define the metric before you design a strategy to optimize it. If you don't know what to measure, you don't know how to improve it. Tip number 2, design the funnel based on your business model. Explain this, know whether you have referral, whether revenue comes first, what's activation, etc. Tip number 3, the more steps, the more strategies you execute in parallel, the more likely are you to create an exponential curve. Because if you see this as a funnel, if you work multiple steps, then you'll actually lose less customers as you progress. That means growth rate goes up. And finally, think about strategies also as a tree, right? Because you might have an idea on how to improve retention, but what about having 3 ideas? What about 3 ideas as acquisition and 3 more ideas as activation? Create a tree, then pick the possible strategies that will actually yield the best results possible. Okay, this is my tip. R works beautiful for me. Often I work R methodology alongside marketing or growth if you have a dedicated growth department. Sometimes a PM might own growth. and they might own this methodology. I also love to bring the teams into ideation on the growth side. Like everyone can contribute with ideation and ideas to how can we improve acquisition, how can we improve retention, how can we improve referral. So bring them in. I think it will make your exercise much richer in as you progress through it. Any questions on R? Nothing? All good? All
I
right,
do have one, Andre.
go for it.
So it's regarding bullet point number 1, actually. So it says define the success metric before strategy. Looking at the previous slide, we actually had 5 of them. So just wanted to clarify, what do you mean by success metric in this case? Is it just one?
Success metric is each step of the funnel will have a specific metric, because you got to know whether your percentage of the funnel is going up or down, right? You need to define what that looks like for your business. So for example, for Uber in acquisition, it means creating an account. That's your success metric. So you're going to see if 1 million people go to Uber's website and 100,000 create an account, you have a 10% success acquisition metric. And you got to do that for each step that you're actively working on. You don't need to do it for all of them if you're not going to touch on them. But if you decide we're going to work on acquisition and activation on this quarter, okay, what is acquisition? What is activation? For example, for a product, I have, for example, if you join the growth program, Enrique, who teaches the growth program, he works at a company called Rose, Rose.com. At Rose, which they're trying to build a spreadsheet, they classify as activation a user doing 15 actions out of a pool of actions. Can be creating a new spreadsheet, adding a formula, sharing with someone, embedding a report. They decided that when a customer does 15 actions, they consider that customer active. So they define that before knowing, okay, how do we improve the probability of someone doing 15 actions? And he explains this beautifully on the program. So that's what it means, defining the metric before defining the strategy. Clear, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah, thank you.
Cool, awesome. Any more questions on R? Wait, sorry. We're good? So before we jump into launch and growth a bit more in depth, I want to ask, does anyone use any of these metrics in your company or in your products to measure success? Or maybe does anyone use something different that I didn't touch here that you care to share? Anyone wants to contribute? I can start. I personally at Kitch use OKRs, specifically across the company. We're now 70 people, so it's large enough for us to need alignment. I track NPS across all my products to understand how we're progressing. Okay. I no longer track the Sean Ellis test. We did it. We had some products above the 40%. Some are not there yet. So we are probably getting that metric back for those specific experiences. And our growth team with marketing uses ARR to measure the strategy within the funnel. It works beautifully. So this is my personal experience, but I'd love to hear anyone else in your companies or products. Do you use any of these or anything different?
Yeah, I can share my experience.
Go, Jonathan, go for it. I appreciate being the first.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and I think it's easier for me because I'm in sales actually. So I think from our perspective, it's more around revenue. Of course, this is a sales approach. I don't have full visibility on what product managers are doing and what metrics they are tracking. But from a revenue standpoint, we look at the monthly recurring revenue.
Okay, MRR, perfect.
Yeah, because we have a cloud platform, and we sell products and services. For us, it's good to increase, revenue for the year. So that's one of the metrics we track.
Makes absolute sense. MRR in the subscription businesses, that's what matters. You being in sales, that means that you probably have targets around MRR or deal cycle or sales flow or conversion of leads to purchase sale. Probably when your team is engaging with product, they're also understanding like, how can we make sales faster? How can we increase the conversion of leads? So a lot of functional metrics that probably are in your relationship with the product team, I'm assuming, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's right. And it's making sure that we renew contracts, and
renewal, of course,
as well. So that's other metrics that we look at as well. So
makes absolute sense. I have exactly the same experience with my sales teams. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else that uses something like this, maybe like Jonathan, or something different that you want to share? If not, I'll move forward. All right. You can also share on Slack or share on the chat if you use specific metrics, but often tech companies or any tech products, they tend to use some variations of these metrics, and we covered a lot. So we covered 5 different frameworks. So it's very likely that eventually, whether you're managing your product or engaging with a new product, you will see them using one or many of these frameworks. And if you use yourself for your product, you're going to be in good hands. You're very likely going to be able to measure success and whether you're making the good decisions or not. Let's jump to our final chapter of today, which is called launching and growing products. And I love this Paul Adams quote that, and Paul says that a lot of people see shipping the product, so actually shipping, develop, putting in production as the end, success. A lot of people celebrate, but it's actually the opposite. It's the beginning. Because you probably remember me saying that until you ship, everything is hypothetical data, right? Your research, your insights, even your prototype testing, all of that is hypothetical because people aren't actually taking their credit card and saying, yes, I'll buy. Yes, I'll stop using whatever I use to solve my problem and use your product. They're not doing that. You're assessing. Now, some things are more accurate than others. Like if you do an interview before a prototype, that's one level of accuracy. But if you prototype and show people, that's higher accuracy. That means probably the data is more realistic. But until you ship, you don't know. And when you ship, that's when you start knowing whether your decisions made sense or not. So let's talk about shipping and what I would have loved people to have taught me about shipping and launching and growing products. The first thing is that a lot of companies do understand that building a product is chaotic, but when you launch, boom, it's done. Actually not true. Theory is even worse. They say it like, oh, just go through it and you ship it. It's a step in the process. Beautiful. But it's a straight line. It's actually no, it's a chaos while you ship. Is launch mode part of the chaos? And then it's chaos because you're learning, you're discovering. So you're always like in a bit of a chaotic mode, right? Because even when you ship, you're going to be iterating. Probably you didn't do enough or you didn't do enough of the scope and you're tackling early adopters and the team wants to grow faster. And then the other customers want more stuff and you're going back to shipping more stuff. It's normal. It's part of the process. Now, what are the best practices that optimize your experience as shipping a product? Well, number one is evangelizing this mindset that shipping is the beginning. And knowing this also means that you don't burn your team towards the shipping date, right? Because if you do that, you ship the product and nobody is there to fix issues that will probably show up, to listen to customers who are now dealing with the product, to know what you need to iterate on, because everyone's burnt out and tired and trying to rest or taking a break or going on vacation because they feel like, oh, yeah, we just shipped, job done, see you next time. And no, you really want to evangelize the shipping is the beginning. Number two, have your hypothesis at hand. Remember in the beginning, you were looking at risk assessment, right? You're looking at, okay, what are desirability risks? What are usability risks or feasibility risks? Like this is the moment when you ship that you're going to test whether your hypotheses were true or false. And the ones that were true, you want to double down. The ones that were false, well, maybe you want to course correct, right? You want to start tracking and you want to get quantitative and qualitative feedback based on your hypothesis. Tip number three. Launching is not the engineering team's job. It's everyone's job. It's a team job. A lot of people outsource that. Oh, the engineers will now code it and put it in production. They launch it. Actually, that's false. There's a job for every single person. I actually say that, and the analogy I use is when you join the engineering team as they're shipping, I call it joining in the trenches, is when trust is built. Because like, oftentimes, and I love the Ken Norton bringing the donuts story, which is like, if there's nothing else you can do as engineers are shipping, get them food, get them donuts, get them like not hungry so they can focus on. The analogy of bringing the donuts is like your job is to do whatever it takes for your team who's actually actively shipping stuff, can be focused, can do the best job of their lives, and the product comes to production in the best shape possible. I do recommend you reading the Bring the Donuts from Ken Norton. Tip number 4 is do the preparation. Doing the preparation is all the orbital tasks that you need to do to optimize the probability of shipping successfully. That includes managing stakeholder expectations, setting up analytics and data, communicating to the market or internally, or even kickstarting your growth channels. All of these things that you can do as you ship product will actually improve the probability of your product being successful and start growing. Okay, these are my 4 tips. Again, 4 things that I would have loved someone who told me as I went into my job as a PM. Now, keep in mind that growth as you launch is also a loop experience. Because now this is where we go to execution. I'm not going to go super deep. Again, this is my plug. If you want to know more about growth, join the growth program. We actually just opened up for January. If you're interested, you can go to the growth in the onemonthpm.com and enroll. I really recommend. Enrique is a rock star and he explains this in detail. But one thing he touches on is that growth is also a loop, because you're going to be trying to create customers and you're going to do a lot of experimentation. You're going to do a lot of acquisition, a lot of retention analysis. You're going to do a lot of different things. And only after you do this, you achieve some growth in terms of fitness, channel fitness, you get to company building. Now, there's one tip that I can already give you. It really matters for new products, which is start with things that don't scale. This was made famous by Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator. And he talks about 4 things that really matter as you do things that don't scale. And the definition of things that don't scale is literally that, is that if you would apply that strategy at scale, you wouldn't be able to, whether because it's physically impossible, economically impossible, or for any other reason impossible. It works when you're small, but it doesn't work at scale. And I'll show you a couple of examples in a few minutes, but the 4 things that you want to do is that you want to do it manually yourself. You don't want to build technology or scalable processes because you don't know if it's going to work. So do it yourself, get hands dirty as a definition. Number 2 is look for signal. Like you want to look for specific signals that something is actually working. Customers are liking it, they're signing up, they're buying. So look for that specific signal that is actually working. Number 3 is when you're doing things that don't scale, all details matter, because you're not trying to do this for thousands of customers or hundreds of thousands of customers. You're trying to do just for a few. So it's when you define those details and work on those details that they're going to actually love and they're going to go on board. I usually say I have a personal principle, which is it's in the details that magic happens. And the final tip is hustle through. Majority of things that you might design as unscalable will fail. Keep adding ideas, keep experimenting, hustle through. Some will actually work. Actually, a few of the companies that I have on the next slide are examples of companies that the unscalable thing actually worked and made them successful. First example is Tinder. So Tinder, when they launched, they actually organized university parties where anyone who had a Tinder profile would join for free. Why? Because, well, who are the most valuable Tinder customers? Well, university students who are perfect to date, use the app, match around. And what does a university student love? A free party. That's it. Now imagine Tinder now is available in 300, 400 cities across the world, hundreds of millions of users. Imagine throwing parties at hundreds of thousands of universities across the world. Would be unmanageable, impossible. The example of Expensify, I gave it in the past already. Do stuff under the hood, like send the invoices to Mechanical Turk, to emerging countries, which will make the cost cheaper. Like that doesn't scale. They would be able to do that for thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of receipts per month. But early on, it actually works really well. And the most famous example of them all is Airbnb, where the founders, Brian, Joe, Nathan, they all realized that listings on Airbnb with better photos correlated with more bookings. So they thought, what if we would actually go to customers' homes and take their photos? Because they don't know how to take professional photos. We can. So let's test. So they went, knocked door to door to tens, hundreds of houses themselves, the founders, took the photos, uploaded, and they validated. Pro photos would actually improve the perception and the conversion of bookings. So then they realized, okay, let's create a process and scale it to guarantee that every single house on Airbnb has better photos, and that will actually make Airbnb more successful for our hosts and better for our customers. So these are just some examples. There's literally, if you search online, things that don't scale, you'll see hundreds of companies with examples. They might be great ideas for your product if you're going through this challenge. Make sense? Clear? Again, I know I'm recommending, but I really, if you're in this phase, join the growth program. You will not regret. Growth also talks, and Enrique talks about this, about growth needs to focus a lot on effectiveness. There's this dichotomy of efficiency versus effectiveness, efficiency being reducing the amount of waste, effectiveness being successful in achieving a result. Growth is about being successful in achieving a result. Efficiency will come later. But if you're now trying to think, how do I grow? Try to be effective. Now, of course, sorry, I'm gonna. I don't have a slide. I was gonna do a quick breakout room, but sake of time, I'm gonna skip it. Now, there's something that is also important to mention, which is at a certain scale, you stop being able to do things that don't scale per definition, and you got to cross the chasm. One really effective tip I give, and Enrique goes deeper on this, is to use cohort analysis to understand whether your strategies are impacting different cohorts as you grow. And the second tip I give is understand your growth equation. Your growth equation means there are variables in your growth factor that will make you grow faster if you unlock them. The example I generally use is Amazon's growth equation, which is add the number of verticals, or meaning the number of verticals you tackle. Remember, Amazon in the beginning was books. When they added electronics, they had more market, times the number of products, different products per vertical. The more products, the more likely someone that goes there finds what they look for, times the conversion rate in a product page, times the average cart value. The higher the cart value, the more sales, times repeatable customers. All of that will influence how much volume Amazon actually drives. And you can design strategies for each section of Amazon's growth equation. Now, you can hear more of this on the growth program, but these are just ways to think about growth that you as a PM will need to own. Okay, it's part of the process. Cool, makes sense. Any questions on growth? I know it's short. Again, I think it's all chapters of the program. Like, it's short, sweet, gives you enough leeway to go search more, but it gives you the main topics and the main concepts there. Any questions on growth? No, all good? Because this was the last part of content of foundations. The next part, I'm going to skip this, is career. So any questions on anything I touched on today's session? Anything that wasn't clear or that you'd like to go a bit deeper? No, we're good? Okay, let's talk about career. And this was a special chapter that I've added as per request of a lot of people that were looking for a career transition or wanted to know more about the career of a product manager. So I have a couple of examples that I took from a few sources I trust. The first one is Melissa Perry's Escaping the Build Trap, a book I deeply recommend. And Melissa talks about what is expected in the career of a PM. What do you actually do? And she defines this in 3 buckets. Tactical stuff, which is actually executing, building stories, working with the team, shipping products. The second thing is operational, which is improving the machine that builds the machine, whether it's the processes, the ceremonies, the frameworks, the templates. And the last one is strategic, which is the future. Like, what are the strategic bets you should be focusing on? How do you know you're choosing the right plans, etc.? And the way you see this, the more juniors will be focusing a lot more of their time on tactical. And as you grow, you do less tactical, you do a bit more operational and a bit more strategic, up to CPO level, where you actually do 0 tactical. You focus a lot more on strategy, significant part on operational, yes, oftentimes a lot of VPs or directors are handling most of the operational stuff, and you do more tact and more strategic. Now, a few highlights here. Number one is that every single role will work on operational, because in the end of the day, building the machine that builds the machine is as important at any level. A second highlight is every role has a level of strategy implied. Now, at the junior, you're probably thinking strategically on a feature. At CPO level, you're probably thinking strategic at the company level, and everything in between is an evolution. Okay, this gives you a bit of a perspective of where you actually allocate time as you grow in your career. The second thing is different roles also have different goals. They do different things. And I love this graph analysis by Ravi Mehta. And he talks about the evolution of the PM. And you can see this, you see in this chart, or this star chart, all the areas that you might have a different level of engagement with. You have stuff like quality assurance or strategic impact or team leadership or voice of the customer or customer insights, user experience, etc. And you can see an APM, an associate product manager early in the career, will be much more focused on specific definition of features or QAing or some outcome ownership. And as you grow as a PM, you start gathering more responsibilities on the top area of the chart, like delivery, data, customer experience. And as you go, and you see a complete shift as you go to leadership, it suddenly becomes everything on the bottom. Everything that's people and strategy. It's about managing up, team leadership, stakeholder management, vision, roadmap. And you stop actually doing a lot of the things on the top that is more towards the beginning of your career. So I really recommend you seeing the Ravi Mehta article on this. It's very well explained, the expectations. And also, as you want to grow in your product career, being successful in these areas will actually put you in a better place to be more successful in your product role. Now, a lot of people ask me, okay, what do hiring managers, people looking for PMs, look for? Now, I don't know what everyone looks for, but I'm going to tell you what I look for. There are 5 things that successful PMs show as they interview that I look personally for. Number 1 is independence. I look for people who can just run on their own. They don't need handholding. They're proactive. They do get things done. They have this mindset of asking forgiveness instead of permission. I trust that whatever I send them, they'll just go for it. The second thing is sharpness. I think about sharpness as how fast do you get it? Do you understand it? That you cut through the noise and get what really matters. It also correlates with pragmatism. Sharp people tend to be very pragmatic. Number 3 is empathy. Empathy is about being able to connect with others, understand what they're going through, create followership because you relate, right? It's a very important skill to create a trustworthy environment. Number 4 is your ability to be a storyteller. Great PMs are great communicators. They tell stories, they influence action, they design narratives that people are inspired to follow, right? That's what a storyteller does. And last but not least, they're driven. They're hustlers, they're go-getters, they're obsessed with achieving a result, solving a product. They also correlate with curiosity. They really just want to know more. They want to learn. I think the fact that you're all here already tells you are driven and you're curious and you want to learn. That's a great trait to have. So these are the things I look for. A lot of my interviews are focused on understanding how good you are at these levels. The beauty about this is all of them are trainable. Like you can get better at go-getter, you can become sharper at cutting through the noise, you can try to understand people better, become more empathic, you can become a better communicator, you can be more driven or hustler. All of them are trainable and all of them are important. Now, great PMs don't have all of them, but the more you have and the better you are at each, the more likely you are to be more successful as a PM. Clear? Cool. Awesome. And now my final slide. Well, kind of my final. The final is who is my guest tomorrow. But my final slide is this note here. This was written by Vijay Patil. He's the former and first chief data scientist of the US, working in Barack Obama's White House. he built this office under the CTO. And he, on the last day, he wrote this note in the cards from the White House that had his framework of thinking, his mental model. And he has 3 areas. The first one is what he called the framework for execution, which is dream in years, plan in months, evaluate in weeks, and ship daily. This kind of tells execution level. Like, where should you aim depending on when you want to execute something? The second part is about scale. Prototype for 1x, built for 10x, engineer for 100x. So how big of a scale do you want to deliver, and what's your method? And the last one is a framework for impact. What is required to cut the timeline in half, and what is needed to double the impact? Right? When you think and ask these questions, you'll achieve much more. You'll deliver much more. So this is something that I keep with me. I always think when I deal with my teams and I work with my product managers and managers of PMs, and something really interesting happened a couple months ago. Is I posted about wanting to, literally, I'm not joking, to buy this as an NFT, because I think I would love to have ownership of something like this. And it got a bit of traction. And the interesting thing is I actually got DJ Paddle to message me and talk a bit about this note and what happened, and actually why it wouldn't be possible to be an NFT, because everything you write on the White House becomes available to the public in the US. So it's actually on the archive, so you can actually NFT it. But he shared with me his story, how it came to be. He shared the post he wrote. It was a really cool conversation. And this is just me saying, like, whenever you think about something and you want to post it, probably you actually get the people who wrote it writing back to you and sharing their story. It was a really cool experience to talk with DJ Paddle. This is it. This is kind of like how I condense my final thoughts on product and what I bring to my team as a team manager. And I hope you take it with you. Honestly, I hope you take all the program with you. I think it was a combination of everything I've learned, and try to bring it to more people to do product. And before we wrap up, on the final lunch and learn, and now you don't need slides for this. On the final lunch and learn, which is going to be tomorrow, 12:45. I hope to see every single one of you. It's our final opportunity. It's also going to work as a bit of a send-off, right? Like me saying thank you to all of you. But it's going to be a bit different. Why? Because there's no guest. In reality, I'm the guest. I'm going to be the person interviewed. Now, the question is, who's going to be interviewing me? You guys are. You guys are going to be asking the questions. You can bring whatever question you want, anything, across board. It's going to be a full hour, 1 hour, 60 minutes of me answering whatever you guys want. Can be about product, can be about startups, can be about execution, can be about life. I do not care. I know zero about what you're going to be asking. You don't need to submit the questions. It's going to be impromptu. I've done this session, the last one, every program for the last 2 years, and every single one is different. I answer so many different questions, and it's beautiful because it makes me reflect, makes me think, makes me share stuff I haven't shared to anyone. So I think it's also my way of appreciating your participation. So I hope you bring the hardest, toughest, most interesting questions with you. I'm looking really forward for that. And it's going to be my way of appreciating your time. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope the last session matched the expectations of the first. I hope the energy was there as promised on day one, if you remember. And I'm hoping to see everyone. And tomorrow is going to be a last opportunity for me to amaze you, because next Monday is going to be the gap. Remember the void, when you no longer have 1 PM and you feel empty, you feel your Mondays were much better. I'm joking. Maybe we'll see. I hope. And I'll see you tomorrow. All good? 7:59. I mean, this feels like by design. This is crazy. I don't know how you do this. Good. See you tomorrow. All good? No questions? All right. Appreciate. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow at lunch. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.